Hey guys, go ahead and get out your own sheet of paper. That way you can take notes on the 8 examples that I do today on this video tutorial. Let's start with example number 1. Okay, write the equation in standard form. Okay, remember to do that, we're going to start with grouping our x's. Okay, there is nothing to group with this x squared, which is okay, so let's move to y's. I'm going to leave a blank on my y's. And remember, we're going to move that constant to the other side. So we're going to have to subtract the 10 over. And I'll leave another blank just so I don't forget that whatever I add to the left side, I need to add to the right. Since there was no additional x variable, we're just going to go ahead and copy this down on our next step. And let's start the process of completing the square. Okay, we're going to take our b divided by 2 and square, which gives me 49. I can then factor this side. That's going to be y minus 7 squared, because negative 7 times negative 7 gives me a positive 49. Negative 7 plus negative 7 gives me the negative 14. Now, just as a reminder for the shortcut, you can always look at your b divided by 2, and your b divided by 2 is always going to be this value. And we will simplify this side, giving us 39. Okay, this is now in standard form. So at this point, I am done. Let's take a look at example number 2. We're still going to start the process similarly. We're going to group the x's and y's. In this example, we have a set of x's to group together, and we'll leave a blank. And there is nothing to group with the y squared, so that's just going to be by itself. Remember, we have to add that constant to the other side. And I will leave one blank to remind myself that whatever I add on the left, I need to add on the right. All right, so negative 11 divided by 2 squared. That's going to be, let's see, 30.25. If you wanted to represent that as a fraction, that would be okay as well. And now there's nothing, or we're going to factor the x's. It's what multiplies to give me this last number and adds to give me the middle number. Okay, remember the shortcut to figuring this out is just looking at your b divided by 2. Okay, negative 11 halves times negative 11 halves gives you positive 30.25. Negative 11 halves plus negative 11 halves gives you negative 11. You can use your calculator to double check. Then we have the y squared all by itself, and we can simplify the other side, giving me 44.75. Okay, we are now done. This is in standard form, so we can move on to the next example. One last thing I will say is that if you wanted to represent this as 5.5, a decimal instead of a fraction, that would be okay as well. Okay. All right, next example, find the center and radius of the circle. Well, to be able to do that, it needs to be in standard form. So let's start there. I'm going to group my x's, leave a blank, group my y's, leave a blank, and I'm going to have to subtract the constant to the other side, making a negative 81, and I'll leave 2 blanks on this side so I do not forget to add what's on the left on the right. Let's get started. I'm going to take my b divided by 2 squared. Let's see what that gives us. 56.25. Okay. Then I can move to this one. 10 divided by 2 squared. That's 5 squared, which is 25. Okay, I can factor this piece right here. Remember, the shortcut for coming up with this factor is just looking at b divided by 2. So this factor is going to be x minus 15 halves squared plus y. And remember, coming up with this factor, I just need to look at my b divided by 2, which is 5. So x plus 5 squared. And I'm going to simplify what's on this side. Giving me 0.25. Okay, this is now in standard form, so I can turn to finding the center and the radius. My center is going to be 15 halves. If you wanted to represent that as a decimal, that's perfectly fine, comma, -5. And remember, this is representing my r squared. So to come up with just my radius, I have to take the square root of 0.25. Okay, the square root of 0.25 is 0.5 or 1/2. So final answer for this section is my center and radius. Let's move to the next example. Okay, I'm going to start with grouping my x's and y's. I will leave a blank. It looks like there's nothing to group with my y squared, which is okay. It's just going to be by itself. And there's no constant to move over, so we can go ahead and get started right now. I'm going to take my b divided by 2 and square, which is 25. Whatever I add to the left, you have to add to the right. I can now factor this factor. Remember, the shortcut to finding that factor is just b divided by 2. So x plus 5 squared. The y squared will be tagged on, equals 25. Now that this is in standard form, we can go ahead and identify the center as -5, 0. And remember, this is representing r squared, so the radius is going to be the square root of 25, which is just 5. I'm going to stop this video, and the next video will be on the examples from the back.